Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's virtual panel discussion, Executive Insight, Building Brand Value and Customer Loyalty. My name is Kim Francisco, and I'm the Marketing Communication Manager here at ANX. To our audience, please note this is just one of a two-part series based on Executive Insight. For more information, please visit our website, www.anx.com. Before we begin, let's cover a few logistical details. First, all lines will be in listen-only mode for the duration of this conference. Second, we want to hear from you, so please submit your questions at any time during the discussion using the question and answer box or chat function in your WebEx window. We will cover as many questions as possible and also have a Q&A session at the end of our panel discussion. Third, all attendees of this panel discussion will receive a Starbucks gift card for their attendance. One lucky attendee will win a $50 Amazon gift card at the end of our discussion. We will be sending you a link to the recorded webcast shortly after the event for your review. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce our facilitator for today's discussion, Chad Leedy, Product Marketing Manager here at ANX. Chad?
Thanks, Kim, and hello, everyone. We have a nice group today, so I want to thank you for joining us. Before we begin, I'd like to also thank our expert franchise panel, Randy Murphy, Jeff Klein, and Joe Finizio, for taking their time out of their really busy schedules to be here today for this important topic. ANX is committed to serving the franchise community with solutions to preserve their brand equity and protect their businesses from credit card theft. And we hope that you will gain insight today on how to build and protect your brand and increase customer loyalty to ultimately be successful, whether you're a franchisor or a franchisee. With that said, let's go ahead and dive into our discussion. The first question will be for Randy Murphy. He is one of two founders of Murphy Adams Restaurant Group, as well as president and CEO of Mama Foods Franchise Group. And just a little background on Randy before we go into our question. Randy has over a decade of restaurant operations and franchise experience and actually made the leap from franchisee to franchisor when he and his partners acquired the Mama Foods Asian House brand in 2008 from Raving Brands. After spending a few years improving and redefining the brand through 9 corporate stores, Mama Foods is now actively growing its franchise base once again. They have 13 stores operating and nearly 50 units in various stages of development. So, Randy, welcome. We appreciate you being here today.
Thanks, Jed.
Thank you. So the first question we'd like to ask is really related to brand value. How valuable would you say your brand is to your franchise community?
Yeah, well, absolutely. As we're a franchise, the obvious, most valuable thing we look at is, clearly revenue and cash flow. But as far as brand value itself, it's extremely valuable. We have a brand that we've invested in, but we've got franchisees who've also put up tremendous amount of capital, so we've got to protect it. It's the thing that we hold most dear. And on a daily basis, our executive team here, the decisions we make and the actions we take are always passed through a brand filter to make sure that, we can try to understand as well as possible, are we always protecting the brand and are we doing anything that could possibly negatively affect it or leave it open?
Great. So you would say your brand is very valuable to both from a franchisor perspective and franchisee perspective.
Absolutely. It's the top thing.
Great. Thanks, Randy. Well, we're going to move on to our second question, and the second question is directed towards Jeff Klein. Jeff, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Great. Good morning. Well, just a little bit of background about Jeff. Jeff is a franchisee and owner of 9 total Capriotti sandwich shops in the California and Las Vegas areas. He also serves as the franchise board president for Capriotti's. He's kind of a serial entrepreneur, kind of like a serial killer, right? He's somebody that has always been an entrepreneur, has been involved in the mortgage industry, the healthcare industry, and also is a partner for the Create Gourmet Burgers and Frozen Custard franchise. So, Jeff, how do you build customer loyalty? What are ways that you as a franchisee are building customer loyalty every day?
Technology has been very important to us. And, we feel it's important to make sure that the customer feels that they're, the number one priority when they walk in our store. The customers, they make or break our business. And, we we like to talk about sales, we like to talk about revenue, but we don't have that without the customer. And we, in our restaurant, it's interesting. We don't coupon. We don't do any couponing. It's all, our product stands by itself. We do, right now, minimal advertising, a lot of word of mouth, and we have been really chasing the social networking, Facebook, Yelp, really trying to grab that grassroots experience for the customer when they come in, and they really enjoy it. And people love our brand, and we're small. We have 78 stores right now. Started in 1976, but we're growing right now. And myself and my group, we're the largest franchisee, and we're currently developing between 4 and 6 stores a year. So as we grow, in a market like Las Vegas where there's 30 locations, people know Capriotti's. They know the brand, and so our goal here is to make sure that their customer experience is top notch when they walk through the door. In other markets, as we're growing, building that brand loyalty is difficult. Getting them in the restaurant is now a whole extra aspect that we have to deal with, in addition to making sure when they walk in the restaurant and when they leave the restaurant, that they walk away having a great experience.
Great answer. So, in the corporate world, we talk about how much it costs to acquire a customer, and so obviously you don't want your customers leaving through the back door. You want to constantly grow and maintain your customer base. Does that also apply in your franchise on a daily basis?
Well, we're using some loyalty cards. We're using some text marketing to try and drive people in. One of the difficult things that we try and teach our management team and teach our line employees that you can't please everybody. And so the customer, I hate to say this, but the customer's always right. And it's how you deal with that customer. It's how you let them leave the restaurant with that feeling that brings them back.
Sure. And I know, Randy, I'll kind of pull you into this conversation as well, because I know that Mama Foods has a specific loyalty program. Do you want to talk a little bit about your Fanatics program?
Yeah, absolutely, Chad. So we do something a little different, and obviously from a loyalty program, and we're doing the specific things of promoting our brand drivers and using social media and obviously people and technology. But the main thing from a loyalty standpoint is we actually try to get loyalty cards in the hands of people who are not our customer today, but through data analysis, we actually determine in households from an 8 to 12-minute drive time around each one of our stores who looks just like our current customer today and who should get a loyalty card to then come in our store and be a loyal customer going forward.
And so what are some of the ways that, once you become a Fanatics member, what are some of the perks, what are some of the ways that you try to retain them as a long-term customer?
Yeah, so it's everything from just regular communication to them, whether it's a menu line extension. We recently launched our Black Market menu, which is kind of an off-menu exclusives thing that we're only really telling our loyal customers. So they're kind of in the know, when they come in to order something off the menu. If you're a brand new customer, you're not going to know about it, So obviously, number one, keep them in the know, let them know about things that are happening, new store openings. We're obviously growing pretty quickly right now. But then we also do brand driving promotions. We have an annual promotion that we do every year, our namesake. It's called Mamas Eat Free. And for a couple of days around Mother's Day, we kind of say thanks to all the moms out there, which makes sense based on our name. And that's a big driver. So we use it for communication. We use it for education to our customers about our menu, about a service offering. We do something different in the industry we call flex casual service, which is fast casual day and a full service nighttime service. So really from that standpoint, and if we ever needed to communicate further, obviously now we've got a pretty large loyalty base to do that too. And obviously we also track, because it's connected to our POS. So every time that loyalty card is used in any capacity, we have actually item level transaction level detail on that usage.
So it sounds like that you guys have invested quite a bit of time and money into customer loyalty.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only the analysis and the selection or acquisition of a new loyal customer, but also on the initial trial, and that's just the upfront. Obviously, the back-end technology piece to that, the application that runs it, the things you have to put in place to keep that data secure, all of that as well. So it has been a very large investment for us, but for us, we see it as one of the most important things for us going forward.
Well, and that's the next question I was going to ask. Do you feel like there's a real ROI for the time and energy that you're spending?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You know, in addition to restaurants, I was in high tech and data and applications for a long time, and so we recognize from an ROI standpoint, if I can, you know, limit the people that I want to ask to be my customer, and they're 8 to 12 minutes drive time from my store. We do delivery, so they'd be in our delivery zone too. After you stack up all these variables, and you're actually asking somebody who looks and acts and buys just like your current customer base in your store, you tend to stack the deck. And once you know that, then you can extrapolate, you know, what your average loyal customer is per year. And the ROI for us is on a per year standpoint, a pretty high multiple per year on that initial investment. So it's an iterative process we do going forward. So we provide that ability to run that program. We provide it for obviously corporate stores and our franchise partners.
Great. So Jeff, would you agree that you will be spending more and more on customer loyalty in the future and growing programs like that?
We do, and Capriotti's as a brand, you know, being a franchisee, the franchisor, they have just brought on a new marketing person, and I mean, you know, we had our franchise advisory council meeting yesterday. We're in our infancy, you know, of things like that, and I listened to you speak, and I'm jealous of the things that you guys are doing there, and you know, have a few ideas listening to you, but it's stuff that we're starting to do. It's the little things that you're talking about there that I think that today there's so much competition that you need to get that extra thing. You need to get that extra little idea in a customer's head so that when they wake up in the morning, they think of Capriotti's. And we're a destination. So people drive down, you know, people leave their home, leave their office, and they want to go to Capriotti's, as opposed to driving down the road and seeing what's there. We're going to pick here, there. Oh, there's a Capriotti's, let's go there. We're much more of a destination place. So we want to get it in their mind before they leave their house or office or school, wherever they're coming from, that's where they want to come to.
Great discussion. Just want to remind all of the attendees that you can certainly chime in with any questions that you have as we go, and we'll filter those questions in between. Or if you'd like to choose to ask a question at the end, we'll have about 10 minutes or so to field any of those questions. But I want to go ahead and move on to our next panelist. His name is Joe Finizio, and he is the president and CEO of the Retail Solutions Providers Association. The RSPA represents the providers of retail technology, including over 100 companies and thousands of individuals. These members include large companies such as IBM, NCR Radiant, Micros, Dell, HP, and other smaller value-added resellers. The RSPA focuses on providing industry-specific education, certification, and advocacy on issues such as transaction data security. Joe has a long tenure in retail technology businesses. He's been a leader for many years and has had positions at Micros and Sharp Electronics. So, Joe, welcome. Are you there?
I'm here. Good morning. Hi, guys.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Joe, the question for you, so we've been talking about brand value, and we've been talking about customer loyalty, and I think Randy and Jeff have done a great job of explaining how important they feel customer loyalty is in their brand. And they're obviously, definitely, Randy laid out some programs that they are instituting that cost him money and time. So with all of that comes storing information and keeping their customers' information in-house. To do that, what do you believe are some of the top threats or risks to retailers and franchisees today that you're seeing?
Sure, and in fact, that's a great question, particularly in light of the loyalty and rewards programs. There's a lot of threats that the restaurateurs or any franchisee and franchisor would deal with. There's normal threats. There's the competition in the restaurant business. The ever-rising food costs, the economy, the weather. You can pick the threat of the day that they're dealing with. I'm going to focus on the data security threat, and there's a couple of aspects of that. First of all, let's talk about transaction data security. Everybody on the call has probably heard of PCI, payment card industry, which has become the catchphrase for payment card industry or payment card transaction security. Unfortunately, if you ask 9 out of 10 people, 9 out of 10 would say they're sick of hearing about PCI. That's the unfortunate part, because data transaction security today is a fact of life. It's the restaurateurs or the franchisees, whether it's hospitality, grocery, or general retail. They're not the bad guys. The technology providers are not the bad guys. The credit card companies or the processors are not the bad guys. There's some real nasty criminals out there that, in fact, are every day trying to hack into systems, trying to get transaction data or any data at all that they can use, that they can resell. Having been at this for a while, I can tell you some pretty interesting stories. I'll share one quick one with you. We were at a meeting at Visa's headquarters a couple of years ago, and they took us to a website that anybody could go on and buy bogus cards, whether it's an Amex or Visa or MasterCard, and toss in a couple of passports along the way. And this goes on every day of the year and every minute of the year. So PCI, or transaction data security, is a fact of life. The other thing that folks should know is that merchants are responsible. When you sign that agreement with your processor, you're signing that you are responsible for the security of the data. And if there is a breach, then in fact you will be fined or worse if there is a data breach. You should know that Visa's latest statistics show that 75% of the data breaches over the past 12 months came from restaurateurs. That's small independent restaurateurs or franchisees. So it's still a big problem out there. And even though it's been on the radar screen for 6 years, we still need to be very diligent on that. The problem is, and probably rambling on a little bit too much, but let me continue. The problem is that maintaining compliancy and the day-to-day activities for any franchisee, it's confusing. If you do a self-assessment questionnaire, it's on an annual basis, it's confusing. You're worried about getting the customer into the restaurant, as my colleagues on this call are talking about, maintaining customer satisfaction. Is the dishwasher showing up? Those types of things. It's not about how am I maintaining my data compliancy or my data security. So there's a couple of best practices that I'll share right now to help you. We had a call a few weeks ago. The Secret Service was involved with it, and I thought they gave some really good advice. And they looked at their breach history, and they looked at what the causes were, and they shared 2 best practices that could help mitigate the majority of the breaches that they saw out there. And one is manage your remote access correctly. I'll give you an example of that in a second. And do good password administration. An example of poor administration of remote access is there was a franchisee, I think it was a Dairy Queen, down on the southeast coast, and they wanted to put in wireless access so that they were in a college town so that the college kids could come in and use the wireless access, stay in the restaurant, purchase more. Well, they had somebody just off the street install it, and they put the wireless modem inside the firewall. They were hacked, and it caused major problems to the restaurant and to their viability in the marketplace. So you've got to manage your remote access. Also, on the flip side, when people are coming in, when resellers or technology providers are coming in to install equipment, make sure and ask the question, is this remote access secure? Have the passwords been taken off? Because you want to put in your own passwords. The second one is relating to that is good password administration is absolute on that. Your password can't be 123. It can't be password. We saw an example of a site that was breached where all the users had great passwords except for the administrator, and their password was administrator number 1. Those sites will get hacked. So make sure you're changing your passwords on a regular basis. Make sure that that your password file is updated on a regular basis, and that when it's installed, ask your provider to make sure that any of the standard passwords on there are cleared out. A couple of the best practices, by the way, that's what those 2 items right there, what the Secret Service told us. A couple other quick items, and then I'll turn it back over. Make sure you're using compliant products. Don't buy a used piece of software that is not compliant, because you're setting yourself up for fines if you are hacked. And work with qualified resellers, people who know what they're doing, and can install not only compliant products, but also compliant environments. The National Restaurant Association has a great document out. It's called the 8 Essentials of Owning POS, or maintaining your POS system. That's on their website, restaurant.org. On that, we work with the National Restaurant Association, and the NRA recommends that their members use RSPA-certified technology providers, and you can go to our website, rspacertified.com, and find the sites or the providers by brand or by location to help you out if you're looking for that. And then finally, as my colleagues on the call said, because of doing loyalty and rewards programs now, it's not just transaction data. You've got a lot of personal information with the loyalty programs. If you're using loyalty programs that also use social media, there's a lot of personal information that you potentially could have, and could get hacked. And it's PII, not PCI, personal identifiable information that could put you at risk with your customer base if you are hacked. So a couple of best practices and threats and things that you should be aware of. Back to you, Chad.
Really great stuff. Thanks, Joe. I wanted to give our other panelists an opportunity to jump in too, and we do have a couple of questions that I want to get in as well. Jeff, do you have anything to add to what you think some of the top threats or risks are today for franchisees?
Yes, thank you, Joe. You may not know this, and I know that the folks from ANX did not know this. We had a breach about a year and a half ago now, a nasty breach that cost us close to $40,000. And we didn't do all the things that you were doing, and we didn't do all the things that you were talking about. And our franchisor had come in and had given a presentation at a quarterly meeting, had brought in a security PCI group, and they're talking to a bunch of franchisees that have no idea what this is. PCI, what is that? We don't need this. What is this? We were doing dial-up for so many years. We had gone to a POS system, which was new to all of us. Enter the internet, and we really walked around thinking this could never happen to us. How could this happen? This would happen to us. Who wants our little thing? All of a sudden, one day we get a phone call from the state police in Houston, Texas, asking some questions about some credit card numbers. Somebody was complaining that their credit card had been used. 2 days later, United States Secret Service walks in our door. And I can tell you that it is, you think that the IRS is scary. When the guy shows a Secret Service badge, you're really not sure what to do. They took my breath away. And starts talking about all the things that happened. And somebody had, we were using LogMeIn to get in the back of the house with just a simple password, no double-factor authentication. All the things that you just talked about, we were guilty of, and mostly because we never thought it would happen to us. And they came in, and they, once a breach is discovered, I recommend to people I talk to this about, read that merchant agreement. The print is so small for a reason, because you are liable for everything and then some. And at that point, the major card brands, they're in control. Now, fortunately for us, for my partner and I, in our group, the breach was large. For the card brands, it was not as large. However, we had to hire legal representation to walk us through, what the card brands, what they do is they require you to do an audit, a forensic audit on your computer, and there's only 3 or 4 companies in the country that are approved by the card brands to come in. I don't know any attorney that charges the hourly rate that they charge, and they go through all of your data, and they pull out all the credit card numbers and all the credit card numbers that are at risk, and all the credit card numbers that were breached. And depending on which state you're in, there are reporting rules. And what you as a merchant have to do as it pertains to the 80-some hundred numbers of ours that were acquired, and how you reach those people, who's responsible for telling them that their credit card was possibly, their data. I'm sure sometime over the last few years, somebody here has gotten a letter from somebody that they went to saying, hey, your credit card or your data may have been compromised. It's expensive. And, we were fortunate that we, only had a few phone calls from customers saying, hey, you guys gave my credit card number out. It's a very dangerous situation. Now, the Secret Service came in because they, crazy enough, caught the person in Hungary, halfway across the world, and they were trying to build a case against him, and they wanted to use our information. Well, once they use your information, it becomes public record. And so now all of a sudden you wrestle with letting the public know that, hey, you had a breach. Well, I don't know if I want to go to your establishment if you had a breach. Maybe my information is not safe. I could go on for hours. It was truly awful. Fortunately, in the end, we had good representation. We were fined $5,000 by Visa and $2,500 by MasterCard. And at that point, I'm going to give my little ANX plug. I met the gentleman at the multi-unit show last year. And boy, my eyes were opened. And now, we use them at every location we have. And I have to tell you that these rules and laws change every second. They've probably changed since we've been on this call. But I think it's very, very, very important for the little price that you pay for that security to sleep at night. Because I promise you, I had more than one sleepless night over this. And you start searching the internet about some of these small merchant stories. Family-owned business, restaurant business for 30 years, had a breach, and they're closed. They're closed. I can't. I am the true case study that we have now become PCI compliant. We now are using 2-factor authentication for our passwords. Passwords are locked in locked cabinets. Everything is, we have beefed up our security to the point where, you can't not think that could ever not happen to you. I'm not sure how to explain that or if I explain that properly.
That's actually good. We did have somebody, Jeff, that asked the question just now. 2 years later, after all of this, are there any lasting effects of the breach you had? And my question, I think you're answering it right now, is what are you doing differently? How is your daily business changed based on what you know now?
Well, it's two things have happened. One, and you guys could speak to this more, and my partner, he does, most of these setup on this, but every location I open now, Amex, any of the card brands, I have to check this box that says, have you ever been involved in a breach? And, having the credit card is a privilege, not a right. And so they could say, hey, you know what? You guys had a breach. We're not going to deal with you. Now, we have since been past that. But, now we have, manager training. Just something as crazy as one of our locations is near the local private school. We deliver food to the school every day. We had a book of parents' credit cards because they didn't want to give the kids money or they didn't want to keep calling in. Just was a notebook sitting on a desk underneath the register with probably 50 people's credit cards. People we know, customers that we know, just sitting there. We never knew. No one ever paid attention to it. Now those, everything is now locked away, manager's desk, 2 locks. So there's a lock on the cabinet and there's a lock on the manager's office.
So that's great. I mean, I know how hard it is to share a story like that, Jeff. Appreciate it.
And I'm sorry, and I apologize, and I'm passionate about it, so I apologize if I seem a little...
No, I think everybody would appreciate having, you hear about these things happening, but nobody is ever willing to share their personal story. And so I think it's great that we're hearing firsthand of somebody that's actually been through this. And Randy, I'll certainly give you the opportunity to answer the question as well. But one question that came through that maybe you could answer is, why do most consumers, why are they not as aware of PCI compliance, and how do you think that in the future this is going to become more and more in the forefront of your customers' mind?
Well, yeah, I think that's a great question. And first of all, hey, Jeff, thank you for sharing that. That's not only, I'm sure, difficult, but and I feel for you as a fellow franchisee at one point in my life, and I certainly do appreciate it. I just want to let you know I've texted my IT guy like 4 times in the last 5 minutes. So, as far as consumers not being aware, Chad, I think I don't know if it's consumers not aware of it as much, or more of it it being a false sense of security. As a consumer, we've got this little piece of plastic that we either show or we call in and give our number. And I think there's this overwhelming sense of false security that the merchant that you're giving that card to is a lockbox for that information. And the fact of the matter is 99.9% of merchants don't have they're not trying to be negligent. They're not trying to be, ignorant to what we have to do. But the fact of the matter is a lot of us merchants don't know exactly what we need to do. And even our vendors that are giving us POS systems and other systems and networks are also not giving us the tools. So as a foresight, like I said, I think the consumer does not necessarily know that maybe not all these installations where they're giving their card is that unsecure, but the awareness is going to continue to go up. Unfortunately, the situation that Jeff had, we're going to start hearing more and more about it. I mean, the people that are accessing this information, they're going to keep doing it, and they're going to keep doing it for one reason. It makes them a lot of money, So it is a business, and they're making good money at their business. So we as merchants and obviously experts on the call like Joe and you guys at ANX, that those are things that we have to do as merchants to protect ourselves. And as a franchisor, we see it as our not only a value add, but really our responsibility and a very smart business decision to educate not only our corporate stores operators, but also our franchise locations to know what can happen, what happens when that happens, what the downside is, the cost and the brand hurt, and really the loyalty. I mean, no matter how much time or energy you spend on an upfront marketing program to build your loyalty program, I don't know if there's anything more detrimental that will pull a plug on the whole thing than letting all your loyal customers know that someone just, from across the world just took all their data, So I think it's going to be more and more aware from consumers going forward.
Thanks, Randy. So I want to move on to our next question. And
hey, Chad, could I just add one thing? Sorry, I know you're trying to move on here. This is Joe.
Okay.
Hey, guys, I just want to add one thing. Why are the customers not aware of this right now? Because it doesn't affect the consumers. If somebody's hacked and somebody uses your card, the merchant's responsible for that. If somebody goes out, get your card number and buys a new car or buys a new LCD TV. In fact, you're not responsible for that. In fact, the merchant's responsible for that. So that's why it's not in the consumer's minds right now. It's just plain and simple. The liability is misplaced right now, and it's all in the merchant's back. And there's several several associations have gotten together, RSPA along with the Restaurant Association, the Retail Federation, the Food Marketing Institute, the National Grocers Association, the National Association of Convenience Stores, have all banded together to bring this awareness up on Capitol Hill to make our legislators aware that there's misplaced liability here, and it's all in the merchant's back, and that minimally there's got to be shared liability. So that's one of the issues. And then I thought Jeff's story was extremely compelling, and it's hard to share. We've got a video of a merchant that was breached, Spanky's Marsh side. If you Google RSPA, Are You at Risk, or RSPA PCI, there's a 13-minute video. Go to our website, gorspa.org/PCI. The video's there. And I'll get to the punchline with what Jeff was saying and what Randy was saying, that, in fact, if you're not diligent about this, these folks were breached in 2006. They had two very successful restaurants. It cost them in total $110,000, and ultimately now they're out of business. Okay, Chad, thanks.
Yeah, those are great points. I can certainly make those points from ANX, but having you guys make those points, it's true. I mean, we see it every day in our business, and unfortunately, it doesn't usually end up as positive as Jeff's story does, and there's a few reasons that his did end up that way because of his diligence, but often it does result in the closing of a franchisee that just can't handle the cash flow impact. And that's sort of leading into the next question. When you talk about a threat or a breach, we talked about cash flow a little bit in the beginning, but it's pretty obvious, I think, from a franchisee standpoint, what cash flow does to a small business. It's pretty much everything. But I think an interesting perspective on cash flow and the effect, and I'll frame this around the fact that if you are breached, your credit card, your ability to take credit cards can be impeded. And so not only are you out this sum of money, but you are unable to accept credit cards for a period of time, which can, be a huge impact. So I think it would be interesting to hear from Randy as far as the franchisor is concerned, how cash flow management for his franchisees affect his brand and his business as a franchisor.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective too, because obviously I was a franchisee before as a franchisor, and as a franchisee, I think I had probably the more common perception that franchisor didn't really care about my cash flow; they cared about my revenue because of the fact that that's what they made their money on. Now that I'm a franchisor and I see both sides of it, there really isn't anything more from the truth from our franchise perspective, and that's simply because of the fact that we do deals with multi-unit operators, in many cases are multi-brand operators too, and it comes right down to if they're not making money or if they're not cash flowing, or if they, in this case, have a catastrophic situation that craters their cash flow periodically or for a period of time or indefinitely, they'll stagnate. They could potentially contract their footprint, by closing locations, or worse, eventually exit the business. That has a dramatic effect on a franchisor's model. I mean, franchisors are not in the business to open locations. The franchisor is and should always be in the business of keeping locations open, and the only way to do that is to make sure they're cash flowing. So it is the most important thing as far as the franchisor's business, is that your franchise locations are cash flowing.
So you would say that it could stagnate your growth as a franchisor to not have your franchisees' cash flow be constant or abundant?
Absolutely. I mean, number one, it would stagnate their particular growth in their development area, without doubt. And two, if you have obviously more than just isolated cases of that type of situation, then it will affect the franchisor's growth and most likely stop it, stagnate it, or retract it as well, simply because of the fact that, franchisees are always going to get references and referrals from other franchisees or prospects looking at current operators. So, so obviously cash flow has got to be the primary goal for the franchisor. It's kind of like that. That has to be, obviously, as a franchisor, we are not paid on cash flow. But if you try to build revenue, you're going after it the wrong way. You got to build cash flow.
I was going to say, I think most franchisees look at it basically just in basic terms, that as long as you're getting our royalties, you don't care.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, I was a franchisee only, and I think I probably thought that too, But it's just further from the truth because, a franchisor, a typical franchisor, there's so much money, so much time that's put up front into building a good brand, and you as a business model, it does not make sense unless you can stay in it long term with successful franchise locations. So, and the only way to do that is to be obviously a good business partner and to do everything you can to ensure and build cash flow at a unit level for your franchise partners.
Great. I think that's a great answer. So the next question we have, I'm going to shoot it over to Jeff because I think he already touched on this. And I think since you had this situation happen to you, so from a day-to-day basis now, how are you making sure that your obligations are met? You mentioned ongoing training for your employees. What are some of the other things that you're doing on a daily basis?
One of the things that we've done is sign up with INX. And I know that sounds a little corny, and I wanted to make a disclaimer here that I wanted to say before that you guys didn't know that I had the breach before you asked me on the panel, so I appreciate that to be able to share my story. I want to say one thing that I forgot to say that people may not be aware of in that merchant agreement. Not only are you responsible for fines, if the breach gets above a certain point, and I don't know what that number was because I don't remember, you're also responsible for that money. And so, you see the Visa commercial that says, "Hey, your credit card, your money is safe. So if somebody uses your credit card and spends $1,000, you're not responsible for that." Well, Visa isn't really responsible either. So, myself as the merchant is responsible up to a certain point. And I don't remember if it was $50,000 or $100,000. We were under it. See, the amount of money that was stolen was under that number that we had to pay it, where the card brand did pay it. But if that got up there into the $150,000 range, we may have been bankrupt. And the one thing that we did do was that the second we were notified about the breach, we unhooked the internet, and we went to dial-up. And that is what the Secret Service and that is what the attorney and what the card brand said was the best thing that we could have done at that point, because we showed that we recognized the mistake we made, and we lived up to it.
That was one point that I'm glad you made because, I think you probably limited the liability that you could have had by cooperating and doing some, diligently working to make good.
Correct. And this all happened over like 5 days.
Wow.
And the crazy part about it is that we were going in the back of the house through LogMeIn, and my partner got kicked out. And he called the store to see whether or not they were on the computer, and they said no. And thinking back on it, it felt weird for him for a second, and that was the point of the breach, that somebody was in there doing it. But let me get back to your original question about the day-to-day. Really, we're trying to pay attention to what we're doing is with the rules, credit cards, asking ID on every even asking for ID on every credit card. Some people get upset about it. Some people thank you for saying, "Hey, thank you for asking for my ID." We don't write down people's credit card numbers. We put everything through the POS now, and so really, being a customer of yours, a lot of that now, our data flow is protected. And
I think one thing that maybe you can talk about too, because I'm sure you were under this impression. There's two things we hear a lot. One is people are under the impression that their POS systems will keep them are compliant, and so therefore that is a tool for them to be compliant. Is that something
so far from the truth?
Right. So that's
and I'll tell you, when this initially happened, I guess we're Aloha customers or Radiant. I don't know if Aloha is the brand or Radiant system. And so today they offer PCI compliant product with their POS system. But during this whole thing, what was going on, they were washing their hands of it. It wasn't their fault. They weren't responsible. Now, when we signed the POS agreement, there are all kinds of disclaimers in there that we're responsible for, the PCI compliance piece of it. Their hardware is PCI compliant, but us as a merchant, we were not.
Yeah, I get this is Joe. I can give you some background on it when you're ready.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, guys, here's a little bit of history. Back in 1999, sorry to go back that far, Visa had a spec. It was a Visa 2000 spec. So anybody that was developing software was developing to that spec. That was before PCI compliance, and that they said, whatever you do, make sure all the data for your credit card transaction is held in the system, because if a batch isn't transmitted to the processor, you can retransmit it. Okay, and a lot of people updated the systems for Y2K, etc. Now, fast forward to 2004, and Visa came out with the PADSS spec. It's Payment Application Data Security Standard, and it said, whatever you do, don't put any data in the server. This is the folks that are that are developing the software, because you could get hacked. So so you go back to a few years ago, and everybody's developing systems that store the data, per the spec, and now the spec's changed 180 degrees. Don't store the data. So one of the concerns out there is there's still, believe it or not, a lot of old systems out there that that store the data. You don't want to put those systems in. You want to get updated, compliant software, and so software and the hardware. So please do that, because there's a lot of folks out there that just think when a technology, this isn't a commercial, when a technology provider goes up and says, hey, your system's not compliant, we need to update it, they're not just trying to make money on it. They're trying to make sure that you're compliant. I'll give you another example of that. In the PCI Security Standards Council's standards, they say that for an operating system like Microsoft Windows, if they stop supporting that makes your system no longer compliant. A couple years ago, Microsoft stopped supporting Windows 2000, and some of our reseller members sent notices out to their customers and said, you need to upgrade your operating system. And they were getting some of them were getting nasty grams back saying, hey, you're just trying to rip us off, just trying to make money, but in fact they were trying to protect them. Be aware that you need to have compliant and validated systems, point number one. Point number two is that if you look at the 12 major areas of compliance in the PCI Security Standards Council spec, that only 3 of them apply to the hardware and the software. The remainder of them apply to the environment and the and the ongoing administration. So transaction data security should be a way of life, not just an event. Chad, back to you.
Well, and I think you you started going into a little bit of what my next question was going to be, which is really how do you see that this threat has changed and evolved? We're kind of running out of time, and I want to make sure we get in some questions at the end. But real briefly, Joe, can you kind of recap? So what's changed over the last 2 or 3 years, and how do you see it changing even more moving forward?
Well, a couple things. First of all, people are getting more aware of it, particularly on the merchant side. Number one, and there are some good products out there to reduce the scope, of the threat. In that there's end-to-end or point-to-point encryption. There's tokenization products out there, and then there's a lot of good best practices out there as well. Talk to your providers. Talk to folks like ANX or whoever you're working with to make sure that, one, you get a compliant system and that you have some of the latest technology on there to mitigate the threat. Point number one. Point number two, on the dark side, the hackers are getting more sophisticated, and a lot of times you'll see in the newspaper that there was skimmers that they arrested a a server in a restaurant because they had a skimmer, or at a C-store, a convenience store, there was a skimmer on the front of a gas pump. That's not where the major threat comes from. The major threat comes from, I think it was Jeff was talking about, that the hack came from Hungary. It's folks all around the world in places where the internet can't be managed or controlled that they're online and they have some very sophisticated tools that are constantly searching the internet to find open ports into somewhere. It could be a house, it could be a specialty retail store, your restaurant, or etc. And just be diligent with that. There was just a large payment processor that was hacked. Citigroup was hacked. Sony was hacked. And who's got a better IT department, Sony or Joe's Bar and Grill? So it's got to be constant diligence. And then the final thing is that the latest threat. This is according to folks that track this. Like the Secret Service, like Verizon, that does a lot of threat. Does a report on it every year. The latest threat is to franchisees, because they'll roll out a site of new technology and, in fact, figure out how to hack into one of the sites because somebody wasn't diligent in maintaining, the passwords or et cetera, and then they'll be able to get into many of the other sites as well. So those three things. It's it's ongoing. And it's going to take your ongoing diligence. And one final note, work with your technology provider. They're not the bad guys. The bad guys aren't the card brands. The bad guys aren't the Security Standards Council. They're all trying to resolve this, although sometimes they're frenemies. In fact, the bad guys are the thieves, and those are the folks that we need to put the gates in place and lock your doors so that they're not able to get into the house and steal everything. Chad?
Great information, Joe. Thanks. So the last question, one thing I want to encourage is that any attendees that have questions, go ahead and submit those questions in your chat function, and that way when we're only a couple minutes out from closing, I'll have them ready to go and we can get your question in. So I'm going to throw this question back over to Randy, and what are the top 3 threats you see today facing you as a franchisor?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think number one, because of the catastrophe that is out there for the potential, it's really data and network security. Just from the fallout of the stuff that can happen. I think number 2, it would certainly be some of the things going on today with governmental policy and regulations, everything from uncertainty to healthcare, taxes, access to credit, etc. And, obviously we're in the restaurant business, and because of that, the third probably biggest threat out there, which has always been out there, is just the potential for frivolous or fraudulent lawsuits, with workers' comp, foodborne illness, slip falls, that sort of thing. And then obviously tying back to the first one, certainly any of the type of liability and litigation that could come out of a potential data or network security threat as well. Those are probably the top 3. So data, network security, governmental policy, and frivolous lawsuits.
Great answer. Jeff, from a franchisee perspective, what would you say the top 3 threats that you're seeing in your business today?
One being competition. One being getting our name out, and one keeping the customer happy. And I guess I can go through all this, but today we run into every day there's another concept opening up with sandwiches, and we try and as a franchisee we are bound by what the franchisor allows us to do, and so we try and work with the franchisor to get more creative, to have more offerings, just to be we don't want to be the next hot thing. We want to stay consistent and offer great food and great service to our customer to keep them coming. So, those would be my 3 things.
Great answer.
That's what keeps me up at night.
Great. Well, I want to thank you. Really, all the panelists' answers were just phenomenal. I think for anybody that owns a franchise or is a franchisee would get a lot out of these answers. I'd be remiss if I didn't put what we do into some context as far as ANX and what we offer. And we offer and focus on creating a full, complete PCI compliance and security solution. And our focus really, and I think this is what makes us different than our competitors, is we really focus on the franchise community. So we're not going after every business that accepts credit cards. We're really focusing on a community so that we can help with more than just technology. A lot of vendors focus on providing just technology. We focus on support and education and also the tools as a whole to make sure that your brand is protected, that the value of your brand is kept intact, and from a franchisee perspective, that your doors are kept open. And from a franchisor perspective, the more doors that are kept open, the more revenue and brand value that a franchisor gets out of it. So we certainly welcome any questions that you have to us at this point. So I'm going to open up the floor. And Kim, if you'll facilitate questions, anyone that has a question, if you could put it in your chat window, and we'll fill those questions.
Sure. I'm sending one over now.
Stay on the line because we are going to give away our $50 Amazon gift certificate, so you have to be present to win that. All right. Oh, this is a great question. So this person has asked, I want to go back to the parable about Dairy Queen. In hindsight, how would a stronger password have prevented that situation? Doesn't the small business owner who wants to offer Wi-Fi to his customer almost need to have two completely separate networks, one for consumer use and one for data transmission? Is there a simpler, lower-cost solution to unburden the franchisee? Joe, I'll kind of let you tackle that question from what you've seen, and anybody that wants to chime in, and then I can certainly answer that as well.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, it wasn't just the password administration. It was the fact that the wireless router was improperly installed. It was installed inside the firewall. So basically, they gave open access to anybody that that wanted to get into the system, and it was not password protected to get into that wireless router. So if folks knew what they were doing, they could sniff around in the wherever they wanted on the network. The best practice for that is if you are going to install a wireless router or install wireless access in your store, in your restaurant. By the way, that's becoming more and more common practice, particularly with people using mobile marketing, where people want to give access to wireless devices. In fact, there's a catchphrase right now, BYOD, bring your own device into the store so you can interact. Digression there, sorry, but you want to make sure that you get a professional who knows what they're doing to install that device in your site, so that it is installed in a compliant and a secure fashion. Then to follow up on the password, it's not just with the Dairy Queen or the remote access. It's good, the best practice for any PC or any device that you have, whether it's your mobile device or a tablet, a mobile phone, or a PC, whether it's at home or at work or at your site. Just maintain those passwords correctly, because there's programs out there now that just can rip through a gazillion combinations and find something that works. Chet? That's
a great answer. And just to follow up on that, Preston, who asked the question, so you're absolutely right that you do need to segregate those two networks, your Wi-Fi and your back office network. And a company like ours is going to certainly come in and assess your network situation, and we're going to tell you that. we also do have a solution that your follow-up was, is there a simpler and lower cost solution to unburden the franchisee? Our system does use a device that will segregate those networks and provide protection both directions. So we can certainly follow up with more information on our solution after the webinar as well.
And this is Jeff. I want to interrupt and say that we do use that solution.
Great.
At all of our locations. And so we have two networks. One that is secured for our data for the PCI compliance, and the other for the public Wi-Fi.
Yes.
And we use that, and that's obviously a solution you guys offered us. So.
Great, thanks. So one other question that I have is, and maybe Jeff, this would be a great question for you or Randy. Should this be something that you handle or have currently or have handled manually versus outsourcing or finding a tool for? Jeff, I'll let you answer that.
Explain a little further. What?
So it sounds like they're asking, could you do this manually in-house or should you outsource it?
Well, I think that, look, in my experience, I outsourced it. It was better for us. Now, in installing the device, I install the devices myself. I guess you could set up a network and have some crazy long password in it, but at that point, you're not PCI compliant, and if you have a breach, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, even a lot of it, as I understand, and some of the experts here can chime in. Joe, you can chime in. Your intent is a lot of it. If the card brand believes that, look, you're doing what you're trying to do, you were doing the right thing, they're going to be a lot more lenient on you than if, you were trying to, like we didn't think it could happen to us. I think you're more financially at risk than if you take the steps. And I know, look, as a franchisee, Randy, the franchisor keeps shoving fees down us. This was just another one we didn't want to do, and God, I wish we would have. But in the same respect, I'm glad we didn't because we learned a great lesson. Because I think we're better at it now than we would have been if we had just paid that fee. Because there are other things that we're doing. Right? We didn't pay attention to what it was. We just were going to pay a fee, let somebody come in and install a box, and who knows what that meant.
Great answer. Thanks. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time, so we're going to go ahead and end our webinar panel discussion. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and give away a $50 Amazon gift card. And Kim, if you could shuffle the names real quick for us. And okay, and Kim has just given me a name, and the winner of the gift certificate is Rod A. So Rod, congratulations. He's from the Teriyaki House. I'm sure very good food. Also want to mention before we leave that we are doing another a second part of this webcast called Franchise IT Security Best Practices on June 6th. And the great thing about this next webcast is that it's going to be more of a deep dive into some of the technology questions. So you've got business leaders on the phone with you right now as a panel. You're going to have more of some of the IT staff and how they are dealing with day-to-day operations and what they've done from an IT security standpoint. So please register for that as well. Visit anx.com to sign up. Also go to our Facebook page and give us comments on the webinar or any questions, and we can follow up. If you would like more information about ANX or our solutions, you can contact us either at sales@anx.com or you can contact me directly at my email address, leedec@anx.com. Again, I want to thank everyone. I want to especially thank our panelists. This was a great conversation. And if you have any direct questions for our panelists, you can certainly shoot those through me as well, and I'll make sure that those questions get directly to them. Thank you again, and have a great day.